We wanted to sit down with you this morning, Pat Paul, and really just be able to ask you some questions and learn a lot about your life. And as you've left a legacy that has impacted so many people around you, and not even us as your family, but of countless amounts of people. And when we think about you as Pat Paul and as a Henry Chafin, you know, I think that we think of Pat Paul as the golfer, as the minister, and as the family man. And so those are some of the things that we want to talk to you about this morning. More so than that, we also want to learn about your family heritage and where you have come from and where the Chafin name has come from, so that we can pass this down to future generations to come. So why don't you just start off with talking to us a little bit about that and where the Chafin name has come from.
Well, first, I'm overwhelmed. I'm honored to be here with my grandsons and my son. It's overwhelming to that point. The Chafin name goes all the way back to Virginia in the early years, in the late 1800s, when Grandpa and Grandma were born and lived. My grandmother was a full-blooded Cherokee Indian, and we then had the privilege of them migrating to West Virginia. And of course, there's my father was born, and he met my mother. He was a great baseball player back in those days in his early year life. He was scouted by the St. Louis Cardinals as a knuckleball pitcher. Wow. One of the best knuckleball pitchers. It's been said of him that he threw a knuckleball as good as Hoyt Wilhelm, who was the top knuckleballer in the major leagues.
That's amazing.
So Dad was involved in sports. And I think that's probably why all of us and the family have followed in that athletic tradition.
Yeah.
Because Dad was that way. He met Mom, and I came along. He was fortunate enough not to have to go into the service at the time, so he could be with Mom and raise me. He worked in the mines. He was a person who, hard-working man. He'd come home in the evening after he worked in the mines, and you couldn't see nothing but his eyeballs and his teeth. He had coal dust, just totally black. And he couldn't wait to get his bath. But in those early years, Dad didn't like the way the name was spelled. Chafin name was spelled. Had two F's, Chaffin, and so he reduced it. On his own. He took one F out, and after a while, he had to change it at the courthouse too. And not only did he want the name that way, he went to the courthouse, and I think he paid 50 cents at that time to get the name changed, spelling of it for him.
Which was a lot of money at that time.
It's unbelievable how much money that was.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, those years, I remember early on as we grew up, went to school at Peach Creek Holler. What a place. Even today, every time I go back to West Virginia, I drive up Peach Creek Holler. A lot of the houses have been torn down, but the house that I lived in is still there. And I've taken you boys to see that time and again, and we enjoyed that life. It was a miners' camp kind of a home. It was company homes that we lived in. Company collected, I think they collected $10 rent from us to rent the home for a month. And so in those days we used script. Didn't have money. You had to use the company's script to make purchases at the company store. Wow. And that's a little bit like Tennessee Ernie Ford singing that old song, I Owe My Soul to the Country Store. And that's a backlog all the way back to the coal miner using company script. So those were some precious years. Yeah. As I grew up and started school, grade school, walking to school was a real challenge, and yet it was exciting. Yeah. You never knew if you was going to get there if you didn't get there. 3 miles away was my school in the 7th and 8th grade.
And it was probably 3 miles there and back uphill, right? Yeah, yes. Uphill both ways.
That's right. And my sister, she only had to walk 2 miles. Vicki went for 2 miles to the grade school. Those were precious. Those are precious years. Yeah. I remember so much about them that we don't have time to talk about today. But
yeah.
I really do, and I do treasure the memories of the hills. Yeah. Those hills and living there. You have three things you have in a coal camp. You have a creek, you have a roadway, 1-lane road, and then you have rail tracks to take the coal out. And that probably covers about a 50, 55 yard width and the houses are on the sides of the hill. So we love that. We think that was a very rich heritage.
Yeah.
We think that taught us a lot of how to be when we grew up. So I have a lot of fond memories. We started at the end of that grade school period. Dad got a home for us in Chapmanville, and Lord, we thought it was a mansion. We thought it was a kingdom come mansion because it was not the company house. And Dad still worked at the mines, but he wanted to provide more for his family. And so we were able to move into a better home. He drove to work every day. I never will forget the first day I went to school in Chapmanville. A friend of mine who transferred there, that went to West Logan, he transferred to Chapmanville. He saw me coming to school that day. I was still walking to school, and he hollered at me, Henry, come, I got to show you something. We ran up to the corner of the building, and he opened the door, and I looked in there, and my eyes just exploded. Never seen a basketball rim and floor inside of a building.
Wow.
I said, how can they get all that in the house?
Yeah.
He laughed, and he said, oh, wait till you get to play ball in there. And so those were some very wonderful years, too, at the high school. I went on to follow the tradition. My father, playing sports, I played baseball 4 years, basketball 4 years, football 4 years. I was good enough to make the varsity in the 9th grade during those years.
Wow.
And even the baseball, I made first team in the 9th grade. I was second baseman. And so those were some precious memories I have of that. I received 12 letters at the end of my conclusion of high school.
That's incredible.
I made all-county football and got honorable mention all-state football. So it's a rich heritage that I have enjoyed myself.
Yeah.
And to be able to share it with you and your father and your brother and the rest of my family down through the years, I'm just flattered. I'm honored.
So we've heard some stories when you lived back in West Virginia in Pete's Creek Holler, and how you had to go and kind of carry your own water. Tell us a little bit about what that looked like.
Well, those homes that we lived in back then, in those days, they were not what you would call fitted with all the things that was required for a family. We had no running water. We didn't have a bathroom. We had a little building called an outhouse. It was always about 30 to 40 yards away from the house because of whatever. And just a quick joke about the outhouse. One time I was using the outhouse, and we always had plenty of newspapers back in the back. In those days, we didn't have toilet paper. And as a result,
you didn't have no toilet paper.
In those days, you didn't know what toilet paper was.
Wow.
And so as the time went on, I was using it one time, and I reached back to get the paper without looking, and I gripped a big black snake.
Oh.
I come out of that outhouse faster than anybody's ever moved in my life. And I hardly used them anymore unless I had to.
Yeah.
And that's probably when I was in the 5th, 6th, 7th grade.
So even when it was like cold outside, you guys would have to walk outside of the house into the outhouse just to go to the bathroom.
Generally, Mom always used a jar, what they call a hot jar.
Yeah.
So they wouldn't have to go out during the night.
Right.
But you're going way back into history now.
Oh man.
But it's the kind of thing that sets you apart that your family today would not even believe those kinds of things.
Well, man, am I thankful for some bathrooms today.
Well, and that's not all. We had to have baths every day because we got dirty and coal dust. We lived the first house below the tipple, which means that we got all the coal dust first before the rest of the holler got it. And as a result of that, there was only one pump for about 15, 18 houses around that area. And so every evening when I got home from school, first thing I had to do is I had to carry 2 number 4 buckets over to the pump. It was about approximately, I would say it was about 100 yards, 95 to 100 yards. I crossed the road, crossed the railroad, and then walk another 25 yards, and I got to the pump. And I'd pump them 2 buckets full, take them home, pour them in a tub, and I had to do that till I got 2 tubs completely full. And it took me probably 45 minutes to an hour to do that. And that was when I was young. I was just in the first grade, second grade in those days.
That's unbelievable. And you said 95 to 100 yards. Sounds like only a golfer could spot some yardage like that. But I know before your golfing years, there were some years where you had an opportunity to play some college football.
When I graduated from high school, I had gotten a little bit of feedback about the possibility of a scholarship. I wanted to go to college and play football so bad. I mean, I cried like a baby when I didn't immediately get the nod from one of the coaches or one of the schools. And so my mother, I went, as I told you, I don't know if I told you about going to Dayton, and I think I need to tell you that a little bit first, because as I hitchhiked to Dayton with a $20 bill in my pocket, I got a job the first day I was there in Dayton, and my partner, he was lazy. I found out he was a dead weight to me, and my mom and dad came out to visit me after 3 weeks out there, and Mom said, if you're not going to have a better job and do better than this, I think you just need to go in the Air Force. So I went home with them, signed up last week of September, shipped out October the 6th for my term in the service, got to San Antonio, Texas, and I was going through the exercises, and the first weekend in San Antonio, there was a phone call, and you couldn't get basic people in basic could not get phone calls. You could have no touch other than writing a letter or receiving a letter. So there was a call come through from me in the barracks there, and the guards had to call base headquarters before they could even let me take the call.
Right.
And because the person who was on the other end of the phone was Jennings Randolph, state senator for West Virginia. My cousin's husband, who watched all of our football games, Bob Sturm, dead now, bless his soul. He had worked where he went to school. He had worked with that coach and talked him into giving me a full ride 4-year scholarship to play football.
Wow.
Jennings Randolph, the state senator, called the base. I'd only been there a week, and he did everything he could possibly do to get me out. He talked to the base commander, he talked to the administration, and I couldn't get me out to go back and play football. One of the greatest disheartening things I ever had in my life. I cried like a baby in front of all those men in the Air Force.
Because that was your passion at the time. I mean,
it
football was your greatest sport.
To play football.
Yeah.
And I guess I brag a little bit. I believe I could have made it. I believe I'd have made it if I got the chance to play. But from that point on, it was military life and taking up golf.
So as I'm hearing you talking about football and your passion for it, I remember hearing a story about when you were in high school and you were playing and you were a wide receiver, and you guys were in a game where you were down a few points at the end of the fourth quarter, and you guys have the ball, and your coach calls a play, but the play wasn't designed for a passing play to come to you. But something like you and the quarterback, your friend, ended up calling an audible, and he threw the pass to you for a game-winning touchdown. Am I recalling that correctly? And tell us a little bit about that.
That's pretty much clear.
Yeah.
Ted was our quarterback, and he was also the leading scorer on the baseball team. And he and I were very close. We traveled out of town to play American Legion ball and together and everything. We were the only two that really, from our school, expanded on our athletic abilities. Anyway, we was playing this game, and we were 3 points behind. And we come up to, I think we were about on the 8 or 9, 10-yard line, and the coach called the play from the sideline. He wanted to give it to the fullback around the ends, what it was going to be, the opposite end. I was a wide receiver on the right. And I looked at Ted, and I just did my eyes and looked at him, and he looked at me, and he blinked his left eye, and I thought, did he really read that? And when he got the ball, I noticed after about 10 yards when I first looked back that the fullback was running, but he didn't have the ball. The next thing, I took a couple more steps, and here comes the ball. And I ran over to the end of the end zone and caught it. It was a game-winning touchdown.
Wow.
We got chewed out. We got ripped pretty good by the coach. Even though we won the game, we got ripped because we didn't run the play that he'd called on.
Yeah.
So,
wow, that's awesome.
A lot of changes.
Yeah. So then after that, you were in the service, and then your golfing, the passion for golf, started to come about. What did that look like?
as I said before, I was a kid that never was exposed to a lot of sinful life ways. I didn't drink. I didn't smoke. Just a lot of things that other people did, I didn't do because my father was a Free Will Baptist preacher. And as a result of having that training, when I got to Del Rio, every night, all the other guys was across the border, drinking, running around with women, all kinds of things. It was not my lifestyle. It was not what I could do, I wanted to do. So I went down to a pawn shop in Del Rio and I found a set of golf clubs for $50. First Flight Golf Clubs was the name of them. And I bought a bunch of balls to make me a shag bag and went back to the base. And every evening with my combat boots on, I didn't have no golf shoes.
Yeah.
It's a good thing I didn't anyway because I went in the field behind the barracks and I hit balls every evening, 2 or 3 hours. 2 or 3 hours. I'd hit them golf balls out in the field. Little rattlesnakes, and you'd see a big one once in a while, but in the field, scads of them, rattlesnakes, and they couldn't jump up this high to get above your boot. And I'd hit them balls out there and go get them. And I got to where the ball was doing pretty much what I wanted it to do.
Yeah.
So I had a big Polish friend. I started calling him Polak, but he's Polish.
Yeah.
We were best friends. He bought a car. We could have other outside rights, and I would drive. He couldn't drive. He bought the car though. He had money, and we'd travel around the Del Rio area, playing golf at the various courses: Uvalde, Bracketville, Del Rio, Eagle Pass, all of those places to play golf. Well, he was a 70 shooter, and I became a 70 shooter quickly. Probably within 6 weeks after taking up the game, I was shooting in 60s, in the 70s. My first round of golf at all was 91. First round I ever played was 91. And so as I look at that time in my life, I became really interested in golf. They had a base championship tournament they played there, and the team who were the top 6 got to go to the Little Rock Air Force Base to play in the Air Force Championship. So we played the tournament at my base, Laughlin Air Force Base, and I won the championship of the base. First tournament I ever entered into. Shot 73-73, and beat a captain who became my worst enemy after that.
And this is the first golf tournament you've ever played in?
First golf tournament I ever played.
And how long have you been playing golf at this time?
Probably, really playing since the caddy days. I played on Mondays at caddy days, I probably played a dozen times before I got in the Air Force.
That's amazing. That's a God-given gift.
Thank you. We played there, and I won that tournament. They sent us to. Let me interject something at that point first. We played basketball in a tournament, and I played guard, and we had went to the 2nd Air Force basketball tournament prior to my golf. I'm leading into that, and we play in this team for the Air Force Championships at Carswell Air Force Base, and we were playing at Little Rock. The score was 101-100 at the time of the game, and the guy on the other team was the Texas State Amateur Golf Champion, Charlie Cootie, who later won the Masters.
Oh, wow.
And so he was coming down the floor dribbling the ball, trying to dribble the clock away. I stole the ball from him about mid-court, took it in for a layup, and he took me clear through almost, there was a big open area where there was a stage. He took me right through that, and I came up swinging. In the military, playing basketball, they don't throw you out for fighting.
Oh, right.
Because all of us fought.
Yeah.
And I came up and caught him on the jaw and knocked him to the floor. And no foul on me, but they called 2 shots on him, and I made both free throws.
Wow. And
we won the championship.
So you got a right hook and you got the free throws for the win.
Right.
Wow.
In that military thing, it was that leads into my marriage, but just give you a quick hint on that. I went back with my coach, and then we went further to New York, and we lost in the finals in New York.
Yeah.
And I got picked up by this other team that won the championship to go play with them in San Francisco at the Cow Palace, which were a lot of pro teams played back in the 50s and 60s. So I had been writing your grandma, my wife, or my mother. I had been writing her, and she didn't know anything about it, but I had an engagement ring, and I hadn't told her. So I told the coach of the team that won the championship in New York. I said, why don't you just take another player from your team and go on to San Francisco, and I'll be here when you get back. When you get back here to the base to go back to Thule Green in the North Pole, I said, I'll be here waiting for you. I said, I'll be in communication with you. So I basically went AWOL.
Yeah.
That's what you would call it, because I wasn't supposed to be there. My orders said to be San Francisco, playing basketball. So I hitchhiked, picked up my mother, went to West Virginia. She was in a basketball game with another guy. And her mother called her and said, "Knocker's home, Knocker's home." She and her friend Myrtle, they left a note on this guy's windshield. "Goodbye, see you later." She came home, and 2 days later, we were married.
Wow.
And 3 days later, we were on our way to Chicago.
That's amazing.
Thus began another generation of Chafins.
Well, it looks like basketball, golf, and love. And it looks like that's in the bloodline of all the Chafins. But
probably so.
I know that when we look at your life now, years later from those moments, I would say golf and basketball were some key things in the Chafin family, but probably golf more so than any sport. It's just, it's in our blood, and definitely in your blood. And I know that there's been multiple achievements in your golf career, and you've owned golf courses, and you've been supervisor of multiple golf courses, and people have known you as Henry Chafin, the golfer. I mean, there's been newspapers with your picture on them. In the golf world, you've won multiple tournaments. You've gotten to go play some incredible golf courses all around the world. And I just think it would be cool to really hear about how did that journey begin, and tell us a little bit about what that was like to own golf courses, supervise them, to be able to play at some of these courses, and just about Henry Chafin as the golfer.
Well, truly, golf is one of the greatest games I've ever been involved in. Probably the greatest. It has just overwhelmed my life. And the fact that my family wants to know about that, I'm just overwhelmed, because all of you can beat me now.
Yeah.
Every one of you are incredible in how you strike the ball. I like to think I had a little bit to do with that.
Absolutely.
But golf has played a major role. I went to work with the city in 1963, and shortly thereafter, I happened to be driving a truck hauling tables from the golf course to a recreation center, and one of the people there at that golf course, I went up to him, I said, "What do you have to do to work on the golf course? Who do you have to know?" And this supervisor saw me, heard me say that through the window at Community Golf Course, and I owe him much today. His name is Paul Meckling, and he's still living. He was a certified golf course superintendent. He came to the window and he said, "Who wants to come to the golf course?" I turned and looked at him, and I said, "I do." He said, "What can you do? Where are you at now?" I said, "I'm in Parks." He said, "Do you mind working nights?" I said, "No." So he had a night watering job, watering the greens, which was fantastic for me, because that meant I could play golf every day.
Right. And at this point in life, you had started playing golf more, and you've been playing golf for a few years, and you started getting really, really good. What were you shooting at that time?
In the low 70s, for a while, I carried a minus handicap, -1.
You were winning tournaments as well.
I probably have won well over 100, 150 tournaments. In fact, I took 4 banana boxes full of trophies. Where each box held probably about 35 trophies.
Wow.
I took 4 boxes of those to the Dayton Youth Golf Association, which I helped form. And gave them. They took the plates off of them, had new plates to give to the kids, since there was not money sufficient to give them. But some of my best events have been I played in the city tournament every year, medal and match, and I was runner-up in the city championship a couple of times. Got to the semifinals almost every time.
Yeah. And
was very pleased with myself, but I never got the brass ring in the men's tournament. Then age caught up with me, and I began to play those same guys that were in the previous. All of a sudden, I stayed with golf, and my game stayed the same pretty much.
Right.
And to date, I've won 6 of the seniors golf tournaments in the Dayton Valley.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So you went from being a person that was working night shifts at a golf course to eventually one day being a supervisor over 6 golf courses. How did that happen?
Well, as you said, I worked nights, and I had gotten my golf game down pretty good, and I hired in as just a laborer, and I wasn't going to be no laborer all my life. I happened to be playing with a man and a woman who are today, one of them's living, and the man's not living, but I told him one day we were playing one morning way back in the mid-'60s. I said, one day I'm going to be running this golf course. They kind of laughed at me a little bit, and later I met with them and shared it with them. They got some laughs out of it too. But I progressed up through the ranks. I couldn't stand to be the person who had nothing to say about what was going on.
Right.
So first I became foreman, then I became the greenskeeper, then greenskeeper 2, and then there was 2 top positions that were still available. And I didn't get one of the greenskeeper positions once, and I asked my boss, why? He said, you don't have any education. And so right away, 2 years before I got the job, the supervisor job, I went down to Springfield and enrolled in agronomy classes at Clark State Technical College. And as a result, and during that time, I was going to college, pastoring the church, working full-time at the city, and
Wow.
working at LEDX. All 4 things at one time. And thanks to my wife and my children were tremendously well-minded and what have you. They knew how to let Papa have time or their dad to study for messages on the Saturday and Sunday. But I was really thankful for that. I'd have never got through that if it hadn't been for Kathy. And then I was appointed the number 2 position, the supervisor over all the maintenance of the golf courses. And then after that, I was promoted to the top dog, top man. And then I was over all 6 golf courses. And by that time, I was getting fairly close to retirement. So
That's amazing.
1993, I retired from there. And just a few months later, I bought a golf course.
Yeah.
And
before you tell us about how you bought a golf course, I think that it's incredible just to see that in our Chafin heritage that we were never afraid of hard work. So you had led a life that was never afraid of hard work. You were willing to do whatever it took to follow your dreams, and you were passionate, and you balanced a lot of things on your plate, which led to the successes that you've had, and I think would even lead to maybe buying this golf course. So yeah, go ahead, talk to us about what golf course that you bought and how that came about.
Well, that was a stroke of luck. I was at a conference, national conference in Palm Springs, California, which, by the way, at that conference, I was invited as a pastor. I was the pastor, and they did a feature story, national feature story on me in their paper, full page, and at a big news magazine. And I did the eulogy for Arnold Palmer's wife when she died.
Wow.
And I was able to stand before almost 20,000 people and give about a 2-minute essay on them, and then I was asked to do the prayer, the invocation and prayer for them at that conference. So I was aggressive. I don't want to boast, but I could not stand not being in part that makes decisions. I wanted to be part of the decision making.
Yeah. What were some of the things you were able to do as being a superintendent?
Well, we were public facilities, meaning that all the public could come and play. And generally speaking, during those days, most of your public golf courses were not quite the status of your private country clubs. There was an event was held every year called the Bogey Busters. And it was an event that brought in all your top movie stars, your coaches from all the top conferences. It brought in the presidents, senators, congressmen, all of them. I had the privilege of having Governor George Bush as the president, Gerald Ford. Both Bushes, by the way, were there. They used my office as their changing place there at Kitty Hawk Golf Course. I had another great golfing event happen, and to go back for a moment, when I met another president, I was out in that field hitting golf balls out away from the barracks, and Dwight Eisenhower was coming to our base to do a national review, and I saw this long dirt road, and I saw a whole bunch of them. They turned off on that road, and they weren't supposed to.
Yeah.
And I had no shirt on or nothing. I just was hitting golf balls out in that field. And here they come driving right up to there, and here come 2 colonels, full boat colonels, 2 that I had played many years of golf with. They came running up to me and said, "Get your shirt on, get your shirt on." I said, "What's the matter?" I said, I'm off duty. Get that shirt on. I got it on real quick. And lo and behold, here come two guys walking on each side of President Eisenhower.
Wow.
He walked up there and he said, how you hitting them? I was tongue-tied. I said, pretty good, I think. And he, what are you hitting there? I said, 9-iron. He said, let me see it. I let him have it in his hands, and he hit a couple of balls with it. He said, thank you very much, young man. Kid, keep hitting them.
Yeah.
They walked back to their car, and then they went on down to the flight line and led the review.
How did he hit him?
He hit it. He got it up in the air. He got the 9-iron up in the air.
Not as good as you, though, right?
Well, I wouldn't say that.
Yeah. So you've always been a leader. It's just been who you are, and I think that you were a pioneer, meaning you were doing things maybe other people weren't doing, and you were willing to do whatever it took to get there. And that related to your life in ministry now. You took over Brethren in Christ Church in Dayton, Ohio, and you became a pastor. So as you were passionate in the golf world, I think you became even more so passionate as a preacher and as a minister. So tell us, why did you decide to become a pastor?
Well, it was an accident, really. At the very beginning of coming here, one man I worked with invited me to church. I was a sinner, and so that morning, my wife and I, we got out. We come to look for this church. We must have drove by it 20 times, and we could not find the church that said Brethren in Christ. And then finally, he invited us again. The next one we came, and I came here, and I kept coming for 7 years, 5 years to this church as a sinner. And these people loved me so much. I mean, they even made me the president of the adult class when I was unsaved. I thought, man, there's something to this. It doesn't ring right. They love me, no matter, even though I'm a sinner, they love me. And it wasn't long after that the Lord spoke to my heart. I stepped out of the pew back in the back and came down and accepted the Lord as my Savior in 1969, October the 15th, 1969, I became a Christian. And 2 years later, in June of 71, the church asked me to take over as pastor. And from there, it's been kind of an going up in different fields all my life. I couldn't stand it being this way. I wanted to change it. I wanted to get to the next level. Like in athletics, you want to take the game to the next level. I would want to take this church to the next level.
So as you gave your life to Christ, I think it's pretty incredible that we're here this morning in the same place that you gave your life to Christ. And now you fast forward almost 50 years or so, you've been pastoring this place and you've been reaching people. You've prepared multiple sermons that you've preached, and you've touched so many lives. But like you mentioned, you always wanted to step up your game. So coming to Brethren in Christ, talk to us a little bit about what that looked like as stepping up your game, meaning you were doing things that haven't been done before. You were doing things with youth groups, maybe that haven't been done before. You were dressing in ways that people here weren't dressing before. So what did that look like about stepping up your game and some of the ministry outlets that you kind of pioneered?
Tremendous challenge. A lot of the older named people who were members here at that time, they were not ready for change. And as a result of that, I had to use some real meticulous planning and directing. They still painted the bumpers of their car black in those days, and that was a challenge. Some of these people, as they come to church, and as I seen that being something that held us back, I realized we was going to have to get to the point where common clothes was, just natural. Myself, I dressed different than about 90% of them. And my wife, she was the first woman to ever wear a pair of dress slacks into the church. And so we had a lot of things to overcome. But once you make a stand for God, once you make a call to God, and you accept His call, it's easy. People will tell you, don't never say it's easy, but it was a much easier road than when I first began. I remember I had a real obstacle in front of me at the very beginning. My father and mother drove out here from West Virginia, and they heard me preach that morning, and they said, no, don't accept. I was preaching. I had not accepted the pastorate yet. And Dad said, son, you don't want to be a pastor. don't do that. He said, I've been a pastor for 30-some years. Don't do it. My mother pleaded, don't do this. You'll be making the worst mistake of your life. Well, I was pretty down when they left the parking lot.
Yeah.
I walked into the church, and my wife met me, and I said, they're not happy with me. And she didn't say nothing. We drove home, took the kids home with us that day, and we talked about it. And while we were at home, the board hadn't made the official offer. They had told me they wanted me, but they hadn't put the stamp on it yet as the pastor. We went home, and there was big snow on the ground. And when we got, and I also taught, I was doing the youth director of the camp of the church here at the time. So I had to perform with the youth director early in the afternoon service, and then the other evening service there. I was doing 3 services in one day here at the church, and you know that's a heavy thing when you're working two full-time jobs.
Right.
And so this opportunity that I had to become the pastor, I was all gung-ho for it. I was gung-ho. I was really excited about it because I thought it was something that the Lord had put on my heart. And really, I guess He hadn't really given me a clear-cut answer. As we were leaving to the youth director meeting here at 4:30 that evening from Huber Heights, the phone on the wall rang. One of my great bishop men of past, and one of my mentors, I hadn't talked to him, hadn't seen him in over a year. The phone rang, and I answered. I said, hello. He said, Henry, this is Henry. I said, Henry who? He said, well, Brother Henry, don't you know the other Henry? I said, Brother Gender. He said, yep, this is Henry Gender. I'm your bishop. He said, I had to call you this day. I just had to call you. I felt like today God is speaking to you, and
Wow.
you can't see clear. He said, I want you to know I've been praying, and God is calling you into the ministry. Lord, I ran out of the house, slammed the door behind me, didn't lock it, got in that little old white Nash Rambler that we had, drove to the youth meeting with my wife, got up on the platform for the service after the youth meeting, announced to the church board was here. I said, before I preached that night, I said, I accept.
Yeah.
I said, I accept the call to be the pastor here. They voted on it. They didn't vote. They said they gave their acclamation by standing clapping of hands. And that was how I became a pastor here at the church.
And so your dad at first maybe said that this is something that you shouldn't do, but you heard the voice of God, and you decided to take on this pastoral role. And now, as your dad was a pastor, you were a pastor, you passed it down to your son, which is my dad, and now it's passed on to me and my brother. We think, ministry can be tough and it can be hard, and there's times where maybe you want to give up because you're doing things that is really difficult and you're counting the costs for what that looks like. In your years, what has been the thing that has kept you going, even to this day currently, that you want to be a pastor and you want to pastor people? Why have you kept with it all these years?
I have a passion for the lost. I can remember when I was a little child, the rules were so strict for people who were members of church, and I remember those things, and we've overcome a lot of that today. But I can remember as children, we couldn't even read funny books, the little comic books.
Yeah.
That was a sin back in those days. That's at least the way the Baptist people preached it. Anyway, and as I grew older and older, and I saw people doing the things that I didn't care for.
Yeah.
I think the only problem I really had in life was gambling. I was a big-time gambler with golf, and so that was a hard thing for me to give up. I was winning. We hardly ever used our check we got from the church, or the check we got from the city.
Wow.
And I was winning anywhere from $400 or $500 to $800 or $900, sometimes even $1,000 a week.
Because you were so good, you were taking everybody's money.
Every evening, I was going home with $100, $200, or $300, and and that was hard for me to give up, just to become a Christian. But I did. The Lord said, you take the first step, I'll take the rest.
Yeah.
And I was able to do that and see that we were able to live and exist and still have money, give the children what we needed to give them and provide for them. And I knew then that I'd made the right decision.
That's amazing. Above all of your ministry years, above being a pastor, the most important thing to your life has always been your family. and you've always placed family above ministry. You've ministered to your family and made that the most important thing. Would you just speak to us about how much the value of family has played in your life? Because we think that you are an absolutely incredible father, grandfather, whatever the family role may be, but it's always been a key place in your life and you valued it. So just tell us why family, and speak to us about the value of family in your life.
Well, I think if you go right back to the very beginning in Genesis, when Adam and Eve, Adam was there and created from the dust, and Eve was from his chest. They took this rib, and then to their two sons. Family, the significance of family oneness was disrupted because of sin. And the fruitfulness of the two, Adam and Eve, and the son that was left, the fruitfulness of how it has expanded to today, the millions and millions of people that have been born since then, says that there was something good about family. And I have always tried to be the guiding light for my children. I brag about my kids more probably than most people do, but I like to brag and tell how that when we was in ministry, when we was going, they had a little trio or a little singing group called the Sunshine Kids, and they'd go, and wherever we was having revival, they'd sing, and our singing group would also sing. But we had some real godly pressure applied to our life as we study the Word. When you study the Word, God is not, He leaves no question unanswered when it's about family. When He speaks about the husband first and the wife and then children, He said it in the proper setting it should be.
Yeah.
And I have tried to realize that responsibility of mine is I set the path. I set the pace. It's my job to make sure that we get there. And I've got to lead right, or we'll go wrong.
Yeah. Wow. And I think that's just it. You've understood that you're responsible, and you've taken that responsibility upon your shoulders of realizing that the generations under you could go one way because of the life you live, or they could go another way because of the life you lived. And you've lived a life on the narrow path of making sure that your children are raised in a godly way and having everything that they can have to be successful in life. And now your son, my dad, has passed that on to us, and we're going to pass that on to future generations. What would you say to some future generations of family? What would you say to them of just making family a priority in life?
I guess I would say to my great-grandchildren and my great-great-grandchildren, and even further, should the Lord tarry, I would say, look at yourself. Go in the mirror, stand in front of the mirror, and look at yourself. Look at who you are. Take a careful examination. Don't just look at your pretty face. Look inside your heart. Look inside your heart and see who you are. See what kind of goals, what kind of objectives, see what kind of a pattern you're living. And if that pattern happens to be the pattern after your mother, your father, you'll know that you're in a heritage that you've inherited that is godly. You will know that it's incumbent upon you to continue to live a godly life, so that your next generation will be able to make the same claim.